Hello, welcome to a new edition of Human Conversations. I'm Jessica Lockhart. I'm the director of the International Institute of Humanology, and I am really happy to offer you a new edition of this, our emblematic program. As you know, every month, the followers and members of the Institute choose a human topic that the Institute focuses on and organizes events about, and one of those events is today's edition of Human Conversations. The topic that we're going to be working on in the month of September is circumstances, how to deal with them, what they mean, how they impact us. And we have some very special guests today to discuss this unique topic. So do you want to know how to deal with your circumstances? Do you want to know a little bit more about this topic? Let me introduce the first speaker to you. Katharina BEIJER, or CARIN as she's better known, holds over 20 years of experience in working with professionals all over the world as an independent trainer and coach. She holds degrees in psychology and anthropology and developed special programs for people coming from the MENA region and for refugee communities in the Netherlands, where she resides. She is the co-founder and empowerment leader of Impact Leaders International. And in October, next month, her book, Sacred Pledge, Living the Life You Were Meant to Live, will be published. As you might recall, I was visiting the Netherlands a few months back, and I had the pleasure of meeting CARIN in person and sharing some delightful moments of learning and growth together. That is why I am still even more especially thrilled to have CARIN with us today. CARIN, really, it's a fantastic honor to have you with us at the Institute of Humanology. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Great to be in your show. First time.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first give you the floor, and we're going to ask you to give us your perspective on circumstances, how you see them, and to share with our audience whatever it is that you would like to share. So please, CARIN, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe you can upload my PowerPoints. The power of circumstances. And I lead you through first a story, then I go into acceptance and commitment approach from Buddhism. And then I ask you and myself the question, what is in your circle of influence? But first a story, and this is a story about a very rich, wealthy man with a lot of problems and a lot of grief in his life who goes to the Buddha. The man, he decides to consult the Buddha, and he has the question in his mind, how do I find happiness with so many problems? And the Buddha listens to him, and he's telling him, I cannot help you. The troubled man is very disappointed, and the next day he asks the question again, but then the Buddha also answers, I cannot help you. If I give you more money, no, the Buddha says, that won't help. And then the Buddha says, we all have many problems in our life. The man is not satisfied with the answers. And he even tries to put more pressure on Buddha. The Buddha looks at the man, and after some time of silence, he says, well, the moment one of your problems is solved, other problems will arise. And throughout your life, you will have problems. But maybe I can help you with your biggest problem. Oh, says the man, what is my biggest problem? And then the Buddha replies that you don't want to have any problems in your life. And I think that's a very profound story of how we go and how we think about problems in my life. And you can go to the next slide. When you process the story, it's in fact all about acceptance and commitment. What the Buddha is saying is, well, psychological pain is part of each human life. And it's far from the truth that we can banish all problems from our life, or that we have a happy life is a life without problems. No, it's part of our life. But there is something else. There's a difference, and I think Buddhism is training and teaching us. There's a difference between pain and suffering. These are two different ways of dealing with problems, with dealing with difficult circumstances. What Buddhism learns you is that you can differentiate between the clean pain, and these are the problems and all the things happening in your life. You can't get rid of them. They are there. But we as human beings add a lot of pain, and that's called the dirty pain. And the dirty pain is the way you think about the pain, and that's your suffering. So we have to accept the things we cannot change and work on the things we can change. Well, when we are carried away by our circumstances, we have to think, what can we change or what do we cannot change? And in my training, I asked my trainees a couple of questions. And these questions are very helpful. So you can ask yourself, do I have any influence on the situation? And, well, is the situation bothering me all the time? And just thinking about this situation, about these difficult circumstances, give me any relief or a solution, or is giving me positive energy? And think about it. If you put a lot of time on worrying, on issues, and you have no influence, well, you add your dirty pain. And what's happening when you add your dirty pain, you are more likely to feel that you are a victim of circumstances. And what people do, feeling a victim of circumstances, they put more the energy of things that are out there, and that frustrates them, make them anger. But if we can stay in our circle of influence, we can focus, we can learn to focus on the things we can change. And, well, it needs a proactive mindset, not a reactive mindset. A reactive mindset says, well, if this and this, then, but a proactive mindset asks you to think about, what can I do given the circumstances? What can I do? And what is outside my control and what is inside my control? And if we are able to focus on what we can influence, it gives us control back, a little bit of control, maybe not all control on all circumstances, but it also gives energy because it draws from your power from within. And it might be a little bit abstract for you, but I give you an example of the women of my refugee community. Yeah, I'm working with a group of women from the emergency shelter. They come from Afghanistan, they come from Syria, and well, you can imagine that the circumstances they came to the Netherlands was because of the war, and the circumstances they're living in an emergency shelter is not a very easy condition to live in. And what I do with him, because these women, they want to go on with their life, I have a big piece of paper in my training on the table, and they put all kinds of things they are outside the circle of influence, all the things that are bothering them. And outside their circle of influence, what is their past? Past you cannot change. Or certain illnesses. The situation of the war, they have to flee from the home countries, the slow procedures in the Netherlands to be part of the society here, the language gap, the lack of opportunities. And when you think about all the things that are out of your circle, and you get already very, very tired and maybe depressed. But then we're going to look at what is it? What can you influence? And then and these are their answers. Well, they said, we can influence the way we think about the situation. We can think about to who we connect. We have influence on how we focus on our future. We can have discipline to learn a new language and taking care for our health and taking care for others who need help. And also, we have the choice to forgive what is happening in the past. And also, I have influence on how I communicate. And from there on, the circle of influence, they really make steps for a healthier life, walking together, cooking together, but also grouping together and pushing universities. Hey, we are here and we are women with an education. Please help us. And there were special programs. So they really, really worked on their circle of influence. And the nice thing is when you're working within your circle of influence, you broaden your scope of what you can do and you feel less affected by the circumstances. It's 5 minutes presentation, but I really want to share these thoughts. The first one is from Viktor Frankl, and he inspired Kofi a lot. Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he said, everything can be taken from you except one thing: to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. And that's what he was teaching his clients. And I came across this beautiful proverb, Chinese proverb. You cannot prevent the grouse of sorrow from flying over your head, but you can prevent them from setting in your hair. Okay, Jessica.
Thank you very much, CARIN. That was an incredible presentation. I think that we're going to find that we have a lot in common when I comment on some of the things that you just presented, because approaching circumstances gives us power when we do it right. So with your permission, I'm just going to start sharing my own presentation now, my own views on this topic, after which we will have a little conversation, a little debate. So let me get my slides ready. So I'm going to be talking about how to deal with our circumstances from a humanological point of view. As you know, I am the director of the International Institute of Humanology. I am the creator and founder of Humanology, developer of this new discipline that focuses on studying and explaining human beings. I am also the creator of quite a few tools and methods included in this discipline that first tries to help people know and understand themselves so they can then take action. Without that first understanding, that first knowledge, the actions they undertake might not be the right ones for them. That's why Humanology approaches it like that. When we talk about circumstances in Humanology, we refer to a theory that is not uniquely ours. We have expanded it and somehow made it deeper by adding information and details, but we call it the 3 spheres in our lives. And it has a lot to do with how we deal with our circumstances. Humanology thus explains that we, all human beings, have what we call our personal sphere, my personal sphere. This personal sphere is something that is not physical as such. It's something that we all have inside that we use as the place where we keep, where we treasure, where we store everything that is uniquely ours, everything that only belongs to us. In this case, in my personal sphere, I store everything that belongs only to me. It's a place where nobody can put anything inside but me. It's a place that nobody can enter but me. It's not a physical place as such. It's more a metaphorical sphere. And the kinds of things that we might find in our personal spheres are all the intangible assets that we all have. For example, if I ask you to give me one of your memories, you might tell me the memory. Oh, this happened and that happened and da-da-da-da-da. But that doesn't make that my memory, does it? It's still your memory. You cannot give it to me, and I can't take it away from you. I would have to kill you. I might try to convince you to forget that memory. No, erase it from your mind. I might even threaten you or even hurt you, so you will forget that memory. But I will probably not succeed because it is part of your personal sphere, and I have no access to the contents of your personal sphere. What do we have in that personal sphere? Well, everything intangible, such as memories, thoughts, feelings, fears, dreams, everything that is uniquely ours. And some people say, no. Feelings, of course, other people can put feelings in us. And I say, really? I don't agree. When something happens, and this is what we will be seeing about the world and the circumstances, we choose how to interpret it. We choose what to tell ourselves about that event. Imagine you're sitting at a cafe with a friend, and suddenly a person crosses in front of you, slips and falls. Your friend might start cracking up. Oh, look how clumsy that person is. According to your friend, that is a funny situation. Based on her contents, on her personal sphere, she takes her beliefs and her worldview and interprets that as a funny situation, and her feelings are of hilarity and fun. Whereas, based on your own contents, on your own personal sphere, you might look at that situation and interpret it as something sad. You might even feel sorry for that person. The reality is the same. The only thing that changes is how we interpret it based on our personal spheres. That is the first personal sphere, my personal sphere. But each person has their own personal spheres. You listening to me now, and you, CARIN, you also have your personal spheres. You have your own contents. And it's fundamental that we all realize that nobody can enter your personal sphere. Nobody can put anything inside. And when we try to enter your personal sphere, when we try to push you, when we try to convince you, when we try to somehow affect the contents of your personal sphere, we feel bad. We feel angry. We feel frustrated. We feel uncomfortable. We feel upset. Why? Because we can't. We cannot break into your personal sphere. But when we try, we somehow get out of our own personal sphere by focusing on yours. And therefore, we leave our personal sphere and we feel bad. Because only within our personal sphere are we fully satisfied, fully at peace, fully happy. This, the sphere of others, is the second sphere that all human beings encounter in their lives. But there's a third one, what we call the sphere of the world. Some people call it the sphere of nature or the sphere of divinity. I'd rather call it the sphere of the world. The sphere of the world treasures, stores, has, includes everything that happens outside of all other personal spheres. So everything that happens outside my personal sphere is in the sphere of the world. Things that happen in nature, things that happen in society, things that happen in my environment belong to the sphere of the world. Those are things that we cannot control because they're not in our personal sphere. Once again, we cannot enter the sphere of the world. Imagine you wake up in the morning and it's snowing. There's nothing you can do about it, can you? You cannot change the weather. The weather is out there in the sphere of the world. Again, how you choose to interpret that content in the sphere of the world, how you choose to think about it and feel about it is what's going to cause changes in your own personal sphere. But whatever is in the sphere of the world is unreachable to you. And circumstances are precisely there in the sphere of the world. So it's fundamental that we realize that spheres are unbreachable. Nobody can do anything about the contents of other spheres. I can change nothing. That's true. And then going back to what CARIN explained in her presentation, if we talk about pain and suffering, according to this model, pain is in the sphere of the world. What causes the pain is out there. That clean pain is part of the sphere of the world. Whereas my suffering, what I tell myself about that pain, how I interpret it, how I choose to feel about it, is part of my personal sphere. I take that circumstance, that situation that I am living, and I tell myself a story about it. And that story is what causes what CARIN called that dirty pain. Therefore, if things are out there, if I have my own personal sphere, others have theirs, and there's the sphere of the world, what can I do? Am I just, as CARIN said, a victim of my circumstances? Well, Humanology says, no, you're not. Because there's a lot that you can do within your own sphere. Within your personal sphere, whenever there are circumstances out there that are bothering you, ask yourself, what am I thinking about this? Am I telling myself that this is horrible and this is really hurting me and I hate it or is making me real angry? And is this what you want to be thinking? Is this what you want to be telling yourself about this? You open the window, it's snowing, and you tell yourself, oh my God, it's cold again. I hate the snow. I don't want this. Or do you open the window, you see it's snowing, and you tell yourself, it's snowing again. I might get some warm clothes today. And that's it. What are you telling yourself? First question. Second question, what am I feeling? Am I feeling angry, upset, guilty, happy? There's a whole bunch of feelings that you may be having. And is that the feeling that you truly want to have? If it is not, what can you do to change it? What can you tell yourself so that your feelings start changing? That is within your sphere. That is within your own personal power. Next question. What do I want to do? Do I want to continue feeling like this? Do I want to continue telling myself what I'm telling myself? Because some people do, you know. It's not that we all need to have happy feelings and happy thoughts all the time. No, some people might want to feel angry at their circumstances because that might give them a sense of power, strength, energy, and they choose that. That's okay. It's your sphere. It's your choice. You get to choose. And the last but really fundamental question is, what can I do? And I would be even more precise. What can I do here now? Not what can I do tomorrow? Not what can I do 5 minutes from now? No, what can I do about that now? Because we cannot change the future. We cannot change the past, but we can change our present by acting. So based on what you're thinking and what you want to think, based on what you're feeling, and what you want to feel, based on what you want to do, what can you do? What is in your power? So in order to deal with your circumstances that are out there in the sphere of the world, I would say that the first step is you need to accept them. This is out there. You need to observe. You observe the circumstances, but the most important thing is you observe yourself. You see, you answer all those questions that we just asked, and then you choose how to react. You choose how to act and be proactive, as CARIN was saying before. Once you act and react, you might need to adapt because, well, you did things, circumstances changed, and maybe you need to adapt, which will clearly give you some progress. You will be moving from the place you were in to a new place. Maybe the circumstances haven't changed, but you have. So all in all, in order to deal with your circumstances, you have to realize that they're out there in the sphere of the world, but that you have all the power within your own personal sphere. I hope you have some questions that you will write down for us on the messages, on the comments to these videos, and we can answer them so we can continue having this conversation on what Humanology says about how to handle our circumstances. So this is the view I wanted to offer you. As you can see, this view is quite similar in a way to what CARIN was telling us, but a little more humanological in its approach. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And now we have a lot of interesting questions to answer. So please, CARIN, join me on this virtual stage. Let me open your stage so you can join me and we can answer some questions, some interesting questions about circumstances.
Thank you for your explanation. Yeah, we have a lot of things in common. Yeah, but I certainly have the psychological point of view, and yeah.
Yes, so I think we have a lot to discuss, CARIN. I think we have a lot of insights here that we could share.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
There is something called extenuating circumstances that somehow reduce a person's responsibility over certain actions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that circumstances can be held responsible for our decisions?
Okay, you like me to elaborate a little bit on that one?
Yes, please. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Yeah. Yes, there are extenuating circumstances because life can be so harsh, and sometimes situations just really pile up in your life, and when it happens, it can also happen that moods can take over, right? And well, I'm also working as a psychologist, so what you can see, some people go really into a severe depression, or maybe in psychosis, or talking about working with the refugee women, maybe something is triggered, and a PTSD, a trauma is triggered, and yeah, you're out of control. And so, yes, there are situations you are not in control. There are always things happening before that, and it's always an interplay of the things, but still, and that's very important, I think, when you take your responsibility, go into the first sphere you were discussing. When you go to that sphere and you're taking back your responsibility and asking the question, what can I do? It could be a turning point from the victimhood or the dirty pain to the self-leadership. So, yeah.
I love the example you just gave us, CARIN, and I fully agree with you. Those circumstances could be extenuating, but the funny thing is that those circumstances are not part of your personal sphere, but they're part of the sphere of the world. If there's a disease, okay? A disease is something you have no control over. I mean, serious, right, and like the ones you were mentioning, psychosis and all that kind of thing. The only thing you might have a little control over is that you take your medication, and not even that sometimes, because your mind is not really yours at that moment. Your thoughts are not really yours. They're controlled by illness. And in that sense, in humanology, we would say that those circumstances are outside your personal sphere again. They're part of the sphere of the world.
Okay. Yeah.
When we talk about personal spheres in humanology, we talk about healthy persons, because mental illness can completely impact a person's personal sphere. That sounds like a tongue twister. Mm-hmm. And because illness is outside our personal sphere sometimes, it's like, for example, when I had my car accidents, I ended up being disabled. Now, the disability is part of me, part of my own personal sphere, but at the same time is part of the sphere of the world, because I have no control over it. I cannot heal my back because I'm not a doctor, so it's outside my control. What is within my control, again, is how I deal with it.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
Yeah. In that sense, yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. So if I try to answer the question, do I believe that circumstances can be held responsible for our decisions? I don't. I think that we all have the capacity to choose. It is true that sometimes we feel afraid, for example, to choose certain things and to decide certain actions. For example, victims of abuse might feel too threatened or too scared to denounce. That's a very clear example. And there are external circumstances in the sphere of their world, for sure. But at the end of the day, what they do about it is their choice, even if there's fear. The fear is blurring their decisions, but the fear is also theirs. The fear is a feeling that arises from their thought. This is dangerous. This can hurt me. The thought causes that emotion that results in a feeling. So I think that teaching people about personal spheres and the sphere of the world, and educating children on these from a very early age, could help humanity develop a new way of taking control, of being responsible for themselves, and interacting ones with the others. And I would love to see that this starts being taught in schools. It's about time, so that we as grown-ups already have experience on handling the three spheres, the personal, the sphere of the other, and the sphere of the world, Karin. I don't know if you agree, but I would love for this to be taught in schools. I think that would make a complete difference.
Yeah, and for me, because I follow myself the Buddhist path and the yoga path, so that will be very helpful, because when you meditate, you look at situations more in a distant way, and there are like clouds in the sky, and they come and go, and that's. Yeah, and it could be with painful situations as well. But when we are really drawn into it, it's really hard.
And that's where you might need a professional to give you a hand, or
yes, sure. To take back your power, because you forget.
And sometimes to just give you a new perspective that you can take and make yours and put it in your own personal sphere.
Yeah.
I have another question for you, Karin.
Yes.
Sometimes our circumstances seem to combine to create very complicated situations. How would you recommend people to deal with that kind of moment? When I think you were telling me that your life was a little bit like that these last months, and my life has always been like that. It's what we usually call a roller coaster. So what would you recommend people to do in that case?
I take some preventive measures. as I did this morning as well, I'm starting with yoga, and I'm starting with meditating, and it helps me really to ground in the morning, and it avoids me from reacting directly. If I skip my meditation, I'm just in another mindset. So I think to have a moment with yourself in your is very important. It could be walking with nature, it could be dancing, it could be all kinds of things. And but sometimes, we are in one moment we are overtaken by a situation, and we don't see it coming, right? And
Like the pandemic.
like the pandemic. But then, even in the pandemic, it was a great exercise in meditating. And I got an eye disease during the pandemic as well. I got blind at one eye, which even helped me to really going into my meditative practice. It just really calmed me down, because I can be a very nervous person as well. But sometimes, you're hit in a certain moment, and then I really try to teach people, okay, when you feel that, you have to reconnect to your body. So breathe and ground yourself. And you have to recognize this is shit, this situation, right? But you should accept it. And then, I think that's the teaching of the meditations, then, and staying in your personal sphere, then you have to move on. So what is needed? What should I do? And sometimes in my counseling practice, I do a meditation with people, and that's it's a Buddhist meditation as well. It's a meditation about the mountain, and I ask people to picture a mountain in the mind, either a mountain they know or something they comes up in their mind, and their head is the top of the mountain, and the shoulders the slopes, and they, in the meditation, they become the mountain. And then the mountain, the weather is changing during that meditation. There's the wintry season with a lot of cold and storm and blizzards, and then the weather is changing into the spring again, and everything on the mountain is blooming again. But under the harsh conditions, and in wintertime, and in springtime and in summertime, the mountain is the mountain. The mountain stays the mountain. So that's a quality you can take in your life. That's also the first sphere you are talking about. Yeah.
Well, I love that meditation and that analogy. I would add one thing, and that is, when we are facing difficult situations, we sometimes enter a loop of rumination, okay? We enter this mental state in which we only see, we only breathe, we only think that problem. So a few years ago, I created a little tool that I called time boxes, that I offer my clients whenever they have this habit of ruminating. Ruminating is like cows do. They have 4 stomachs, so they chew on food, they swallow it, then they chew on it again. So we say that human beings ruminate when they keep on bringing the same ideas to think about them over and over again. So what I tell these people is, no matter how long you ruminate, you're not going to come up with new ideas. After a certain time, that's it. You cannot come up with anything else, because you've already used the knowledge you have and the experience you have.
Yeah,
so
right.
That causes a lot of helplessness and hopelessness. Helplessness because you can't change it. You're thinking about the past. What happened? helplessness, because there's nothing you can do about the future because it's not here yet. So I always tell them, if you have that problem and the circumstances become pervasive and the only thing you live, give yourself a time box. A time box is a little exercise in which you set a timer, and this is fundamental. You have to set a timer, and you're going to give you a specific time to really delve deep into this problem or circumstance. So you're going to say, okay, I'm going to have a time box, and it's going to last 15 minutes. So you turn the timer for 15 minutes, and you imagine yourself physically entering a box, closing the box. But before you do that, you're going to tell yourself when your next time box is going to happen. Before you close the lid, you need to know when your next time box is planned. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., in 2 weeks at 7 p.m., whatever. Okay, so you enter the time box. And for the time you're in your time box, you let yourself go wild, no control. If feelings overtake you, feelings overtake you. If you need to scream, you scream. If you need to laugh, you laugh. If you need to cry, you cry. If you need to worry, you worry without control. But then, the timer rings. You have to take control over yourself, take a grip. And when you exit the time box and you close the lid again, from that moment on until the next time box that you already planned, you're not going to allow yourself any thoughts about this problem or circumstance. If they come, you say, my next time box is tomorrow at 10, and you're not going to focus on them. This will give you a little control over your thinking process. It will give you a certain structure and a certain order, and it will help you control the negative feelings and the release of negative hormones and neurotransmitters that accumulate in your body. It's a simple exercise, but extremely effective. So if you're dealing with bad circumstances, maybe you can use this little tool. I have one more question for you.
I want to add, because I also worked with the time box thing, and it's really, really working. And you can do it with journaling, that you start writing for yourself. And they have a name for it in Sanskrit, and it's the Chitta Fitri or the Kleshas. And this is your monkey mind. Your monkey, like a monkey jumping all the time, bringing you nowhere. So, calm down the monkey mind.
I love it, the monkey mind.
Monkey mind, yes, yeah.
Okay. So, CARIN, how do you think, and this is just your personal opinion I'm asking for now, how do you think we're growing better prepared to handle our circumstances when compared to our ancestors, and what else could we do? So, do you think as humanity, do you think we've made any progress? Do you think we learned to deal with circumstances better? And what else do you think we could do?
Oh, Jessica.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we do any better than our ancestors, but they were living in different circumstances, different contexts, different problems, different phase of life as well. Think about the hunters and the food gatherers. They had to survive and work with their instinct, and that part of the brain is very well developed. And maybe I can explain something about the 3 layers of the brain. You have the instinctive brain, and when you are in immediate danger, you have an automatic reaction. You can control it. You fight, you flight, or you freeze. And when you look at your hand, this part is instinctive brain. And then you have the emotional brain. That's our primary emotions of anger and fear and joy and sadness. But then, and this part could be, this little part is the emotional brain. But then we have a little part like the thumb, Just look at it. That's our neocortex. That's the newest brain layer. And that's the brain layer that learns us to stay calm, look at situations from a distance, more objective, helicopter view. And the neocortex is also like a muscle. You can train it, and you can train it with meditation and yoga and moving into stillness. So, I don't think there was a lot of neocortex training with the ancestors. But then they, in their context, they needed to survive, and their pace of life was differently. But now there is more, because the research on brain development is quite interesting. What they did for the last decades. And they did a lot of research on the monks, and Dalai Lama also asked, research my brain, and how he can stay calm, and who he's teaching people to stay calm. It's just training that neocortex. So maybe this is a bit of an answer.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I fully agree with you. We have much more knowledge. And knowledge helps us act, is what we say in Humanology. First, know and understand yourself, and then act. So with all this new knowledge that we are gathering, and with this deeper understanding of who we are, I think we're better prepared to act. We are better ready to decide things based on knowledge. And that is completely changing the way we react to the world. Because in the past, maybe people felt like victims all the time, whereas today, some people are not feeling like victims so much, and they're being more proactive. They're taking action into their hands, and they're doing things. So I think there is progress. The question is, what else can we do? Well, of course, as the mother of humanology, I would recommend that humanology is taught as an obligatory subject in all primary schools in the world, so that children already start knowing all these things, and they can handle them and they can use them, because it is part of who they are. We study biology, we study chemistry, we study mathematics. Why not human beings? But in a humanological perspective, not just as bones and cartilage and cells. No, what makes us us? I think that would really change the way people deal with circumstances, for example. Well, CARIN, I ran out of questions, and I'm afraid we've run out of time too, because we have a lot to share and a lot to discuss. I really, really loved having you in our show. I hope this is the first of many times. I hope so. Share. Yes, you have so much knowledge to share with our followers and with our audience. Is there any last message you would like to share with the people who are watching us?
Well, I want to thank you, Jessica. And I had that proverb about the crows who are flying above your head. Well, people, don't let them nest into your hair and fly into your hair. I think that's quite a clear and visible way to think about your problems.
I love it. So there you go, people. Don't let the cross stand on your head. CARIN, thank you very much. We will for sure continue chatting some of it.
Yes. Thank you.
And now we're going to listen to the second wonderful speaker we have today with us. I am extremely pleased to introduce Anna VESKOVA to you, because she's a dear friend of mine. We met a few years ago in beautiful Ireland while attending a course on a very dear subject. And since then, there was this connection, and since then we've remained friends. And that is why I'm especially pleased to introduce Anna. Anna is a multilingual professional with more than 17 years of experience in the dynamic world of hospitality. She's lived in 3 different countries and speaks 4 languages fluently. As a career coach, she's committed to empowering emerging leaders, supporting them in strengthening their self-leadership enhancing their emotional intelligence, and unlocking their potential. Her life mission is to inspire people to take ownership for themselves so that they can live a more meaningful life. Anna is, as you will see, a really inspirational person who has a lot to share with the world. She has bright, smart ideas, and I am sure she's going to inspire us and give us a lot of food for thought. So, Anna, what do you want to share with our audience today about the power of circumstances? Welcome. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jessica, and hello, everyone. Wow, what an introduction. Jess, you're a dear, dear friend, and I'm very happy to participate at your talk. As a starter, what I want to say is that I haven't prepared for today. There you go, a coach that shows up unprepared. What I have done is really, since I received the invitation from Jessica, is to work on myself, to allow universe to show up today, to speak to you through me and through Jessica. So whatever we say today, don't take it as something that we are teaching you. It's universe talking to you, and really take whatever resonates with you. I really wanted to highlight that in the beginning. There is no teaching, there is no intervention from our side. We're just showing up, taking 100% responsibility for the message we transmit through universe. The topic of power of circumstances is really dear to me. When I received this invitation, I was quite surprised because I realized that this has become an unconscious competence for me. So it's not something I just sit and reflect on, but it's a way of life. And the first question I received for all of you through inspiration is, who do you give your power to, and what do you give your power to? I don't have a definition regarding the power of circumstances, but these two questions really wanted to be put out there. Who do you give your power to, and what do you give your power to?
Wow, that's really inspiring. As I told you, she was going to surprise you. I love it, Anna. I know that a lot of people might find it hard to understand what you're talking about when you say that you want to just be the vehicle that conveys and transmits that understanding of the power of circumstances. So for those of you who are listening and watching this conversation, this human conversation, just accept what Anna's giving you. Take it to heart. Make it yours. And only then react. That's my advice to you. Anna, we've been talking about circumstances a lot with the previous speaker, but we want to approach the topic with you now. You're saying that you're here just as a transmitter of information, and that is also putting yourself in the hands of circumstances because you're giving up your power to control. Would you say that that power to control is something that most people struggle with?
It's a really good question and a great point. I can't talk for everyone. What I'm inspired to say is really, first, stop. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, and look around. Become aware of the present moment. This is really, really, really powerful because we take perception for reality, and we tend to believe our thoughts, especially when they're negative, and thinking that we have control over a situation. That's also our perception, and control is not real. Power is real. Control is an illusion. But it's up to you to decide. What do you believe that? And then what do you do with it? What action do you take? And like you said, whatever we feel inspired to say today, it's universe talking to you. But it can stop there. Once you've become aware of that, if you don't take action, well, Jess and I, we move on with our life because it's a habit of ours to take action. But if the information comes to you and you don't take action, then you pay the price for that.
And don't you also pay the price when you do take action?
Then you have a high return on the efforts and time invested. So do your maths.
Okay, so when people are listening to you and they say that divinity or inspiration is speaking through you to them, do they have to believe everything you say? Is that voice talking to them unchecked? Or is it really something they have to question later? What would you recommend? What would you suggest based on how you're feeling now?
Again, it's about perception. So it's a great question, Jess, because the word divinity or inspiration, that can be a trigger word for many people. So again, check with your emotions, check what it means to you, check how you feel about something. This is my perception, this is my decision to express it this way. But how you will perceive it, that's up to you, and you have the power. We only have the circumstances, but how you decide to react, that belongs to you, to everyone watching and listening to this.
I was talking to somebody about this same topic for our magazine, and she happens to be Ukrainian, living in the US. And of course, she had to refer to the war going on in Ukraine. And she was saying that the circumstances that befell the people in Ukraine are, of course, shattering and hard to bear. What power do people have when facing such big circumstances, such complicated circumstances? And I'm talking about this because I just heard from this lady, but we could also ask the same about the people in Morocco with a horrible earthquake that they had. So there are circumstances and circumstances. And when such huge things happen, how can people channel that power for themselves?
Mm-hmm. It's a very deep subject, and thank you for bringing this up, because I really want to acknowledge all the people who have to go through this, no matter in which country they are. And there is something very strong and very powerful and on point that you have just said. There are circumstances and circumstances. And I know that when we're going through something, or we're a challenge, or what, simply put, when we're going through hell, it's really, we are in pain. Someone else might be in more pain, but this is not comparable. So I think it will be, I mean, I live in Switzerland. I live in a peaceful country, so it will be very pretentious of me to give an opinion. What I can say is I really focus on not feeling pity, but really having all these people in my prayers for us to find peace, but peace within us, peace that belongs to each of us. And to ask ourselves the questions, what is it that we can do to support these people? This is really what I feel inspired to say on the subject, because I really don't feel at ease to speak in a subject knowing that my current circumstances are so privileged.
Which leads me to approaching the subject from a slightly different point of view, which is, yeah, it is true that to those people, those circumstances are overwhelming and they are as hard as can be. But it's also true that sometimes people feel uncomfortable when others complain about circumstances that to them are not that serious. You know, it's like I have two young children. No, I have two children who are not that young anymore. But I hear them talking and they never lived any of those hard circumstances. They had their own. But when they complain about, I don't know, not being able to go to a concert or something happening that destroys their plans for that evening, you know, sometimes people feel upset because they complain about such things. Oh, why does this happen to me?
Yes.
And what I always tell those people is, you're not in their shoes. What to you might sound superficial and not that serious might be triggering some kind of deep pain in them.
Yes.
And it's important that we try to stop judging people and accept that we all have our stories, that we all have our circumstances that could really be hurting us for reasons that we might not know.
Absolutely. And it's a really good point about judgment. We all hear that judgment is not a good thing. We all judge, don't we? I mean, let's be honest. And when I started working on myself in the area of judgment, I struggled at the beginning and I realized that I didn't have the tools. And I understood that as long as I continue judging myself, I will not be able to stop judging others and to experience empathy. And I needed a tool to get to that level. And the tool that I'm really inspired to share with everyone is, it's a very simple technique, not easy. Okay, there's a difference.
And easy are not always the same thing. You're right.
But the technique is simple. First is to become aware that we feel different emotions. So the first step is to label the emotion. You know, when you are tired, sometimes you are tired because you're bored. And sometimes you are tired because you've worked so hard and then you just can't take it anymore. Your brain cannot function anymore. Sometimes you're tired because you have bad sleep patterns. So you cannot identify the same situation with the same word. So the technique and the power here, you know, taking charge over the circumstances to label the emotion. That's the first step. And once you have done that, is to simply ask yourself the question, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to me? Really the significance, because if you're bored, that's the tip of the iceberg. But, you know, below the water, the meaning is more profound. And once you find this, then you stop judging yourself, because like you said, this emotion links to something more profound, which causes you pain. And when you understand this for yourself, it's way easier to stop judging others. And when you stop judging others, you understand that we have different, based on the circumstances we have had to face, either we learn the lesson and we live with more compassion, or we don't learn the lesson and the lesson becomes more and more difficult. And it will repeat itself as long as we don't learn it. I'm sorry if that disappoints some people to hear it, but there's no other way.
You see, I told you, everyone who's watching now or who will be watching it later, that she was going to give you a lot of food for thought. There's one more thing that I want to approach with you. Sometimes circumstances seem to overwhelm us. It's like, I can't take this anymore. It's too much. I can't deal with this. And at the beginning, you said when circumstances are hard, slow down, take a deep breath, and then face them. But sometimes they're so huge that people feel paralyzed.
Yes.
Any tips on how to deal with such huge things like the loss of a very loved person, or, you know, these, I don't know, an illness that is really severe? I remember when I was told that I would never walk again, that was a huge thing in my life. So do you have any tips, any ideas on how people can somehow handle those situations better?
I can only speak for myself, and I can share what has worked really well for me so far. Is really having self-compassion, learn to be patient. Because what happens is your emotions are triggered and there's something to be healed. That word might be a trigger. So I invite people to choose other words. Simply give yourself time and accept that a situation might cause you pain for a day. It might cause you pain for a week or for a month. You and I have known each other for years, and you know, I have been working on some things for years and they still haven't been healed. But I give myself time, because when you put things in perspective, it's like, well, you're gonna suffer 10 years of your life or your whole life if you're blessed to have a long life. So really do the maths.
Yeah.
And the bottom line of it is, and what I'm inspired, to say is, it comes down to self-love. And it's such a cheesy word for so many people. But if you have love for yourself, it means, and let me explain, it's taking 100% responsibility for yourself, for your life, for your actions, and for the circumstances you create. And that is self-love for me. And when you're able to care for self first and always, it gives you so much energy to be an example for others and inspire them to do the same. So you become a giver and not a taker.
And it's funny because I was just going to use a word you just used. I was going to say, yes, at the end of the day, circumstances happen. They might not be our fault, but how we react to them, what we do, is our responsibility. So it's not a matter of fault or guilt. It's more a matter of responsibility. You have the responsibility to take care of yourself and to try and do the best for yourself. And that, I think, is what you're referring to when you talk about self-love.
Yes. Yes.
Anna, you lived in many different countries. Well, you lived in a few different countries. You have really been immersed, deeply immersed in different cultures. And the question I want to ask you now is, do you perceive a difference in the way people approach their circumstances based on their culture?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any lessons we can learn from that?
It's very recent. For me, I've been really working on the mindset around money. And I believe that the access to money, not the education and good accommodation, really the access to money and the emotions attached to our relationship with money, that is a game changer, no matter the country where you have lived. Other than that, really, I have seen, like you said, spoiled people that I was very inspired to judge, until I realized that, of course, their circumstances were so different to mine. And therefore, we cannot compare our mindset and our emotional maturity. So it's really, if I'm answering the question where I am today in my personal development, I would say it's really related to our emotions attached to money.
Yeah, and that is conveyed through culture, for sure. when I get to this point, I often speak about my daughter. My daughter was born in Kazakhstan, and she was taken to an orphanage when she was found in the street. She was very young. She was about 2 years of age. I happened to be born in the US of A, in the United States. Our circumstances couldn't have been any more different. I was born not to a wealthy family, but to a family who could feed me and clothe me and care for me. She underwent adoption. And she was one of the lucky ones, because many of the kids in her orphanage were never adopted and had a very tough life. And she was just born there. I mean, we don't choose where we're born. We just happen to be born. So when people judge others based on what they have or have not, based on their nationality, based on, I always think of my daughter and myself, and I say, there's no merit, there's no judgment. We just happen to be there. So when people feel superior to others just because they are from this country or they blah, blah, it's so unfair, because you just happen to be there. And with that comes all the rest. If my daughter had grown up in Kazakhstan, her worldview would be completely different from the one she has now, after having lived in 6 different countries. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of all our experiences and the circumstances that take us places to experience those experiences, if I may say. And that gives us a completely different perspective on every subject, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that I would like people to consider today is that, as you said, our view of topics is completely biased by our upbringing and our circumstances and our experiences in life. And judging others from our position can never, ever be fair to the other person, because we're not them.
And especially, like you said, if you judge others, you kind of feel either superior or inferior to them. And you can be sure that in this circumstance, you're giving away your power. What are you doing, in fact? You're blaming others. And when you blame others, you lose. It's a lose-lose. It's very simple.
Wow, Anna, that's, I think, a fantastic note to finish this human conversation. I think we've given people a lot of food for thought. You've inspired them, I'm sure. You gave them a lot of insights. I'm sure they're going to feel that connection that you started your presentation with. I don't doubt it. And I invite everybody who's watching this or who will watch it later to send us their comments, their questions, if they have anything to say, if they felt inspired. We would love to hear from you. And we will, of course, Anna, let you know what people say. You will be more than invited to participate in the conversation.
I have one last question.
Yes, please.
To share, to ask. And the beauty of it is that we don't need to know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
The universe is asking you, if you stay on the same path, where do you land?
There you have a question. Ladies, gentlemen, we want you to think about it. Thank you, Anna. It was very, very inspiring. I'm so happy to have had you in Human Conversations. I hope this is the first of many, because as you guys see, she has a lot to share and a lot to teach. Even if she didn't want to teach, but she taught us for sure. Thank you, Anna. Really, thank you.
Thank you.
And to everybody else watching the show today or in the reruns, you know, this is your Human Conversation of the month. Every month we have an edition of Human Conversations, and we invite you to join us next month again, in which the topic that we're going to be dealing with at the Institute of Humanology is going to be no other than forgiveness, another important human topic. So join us next month too for a new edition of Human Conversations. I'm Jessica Lockhart, and this is Human Conversations. Have a fantastic day. Bye.